Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Zed, for the kind introduction. Nakakatakot yung word na expert. People might think I have all the answers. Well, let's begin. The reason why I'm here is to be able to provide some ideas which may not be evident to a lot of people. And so tinatanong ko nga kanina, I was asking you, wait, wait a minute. Ayan. How is it now? Okay. So I'm here to, the title of my presentation is Zero Waste to Nature, because towards the end of the presentation, this is the theme of PARMS, organization I'm coming from, the Philippine Alliance for Recycling and Materials Sustainability. Okay, next slide. Okay, since Zed started the ball rolling by mentioning that plastic becomes a major issue when it comes to maintaining our marine environment. Actually, there are other issues, but plastic becomes the most visible and the most long-lasting, based on the data that's being floated around. So, but it's not the only issue. Now, to begin my presentation, I'd like to bring to you the Manila Bay situation, because it's similar to what we're encountering also here in Zambales. So let's take the approach used by the Manila Bay. They have this Manila Bay Sustainable Development Master Plan. Can we go to that slide, please? What approach was used by the Manila Bay Sustainable Development? And in terms of economic and governance, Manila Bay is one of the country's most important places. It is a valuable natural resource with enormous ecological, economic, cultural, historical, and aesthetic benefits. So Manila Bay became a center of attention when the Supreme Court ordered the local governments, the national agencies, to clean up their act, because Manila Bay had a very high fecal coliform level, that it was almost poisonous to drink water from Manila Bay. And so they came out with a master plan. So can we go to the next slide? And the master plan included several components. So you have there are 6 components mentioned here: the improvement of the management of critical habitats, improve the solid waste management, reduce the pollution load, the issue of the informal settlers. Then we also have the issue of the disaster risk reduction programs and the sustainable fisheries. Now, why am I mentioning all of this? I'm not here to discuss this in detail, but just to show to you that when you attack the problem of the marine environment, you have to include all these issues to be able to have a sustainable solution. Now, what is now the importance of enumerating this? We now go to the next slide. There is a critical interrelationship or interconnectedness among these different issues. Like in Manila Bay, there is the problem of the solid waste. And the solid waste problem affects the critical habitats. It affects the pollution load of the bay. And mostly they blame the informal settlers for the existence of this solid waste. But actually, if you look at the waste reaching Manila Bay, they come from the inland cities and LGUs surrounding Manila Bay. They do not just come from the coastal towns. So the rivers that, like the Pasig River, that flows into the Manila Bay, it carries all the garbage, all the sewer waste that flows into the Manila Bay. Now, because the solid waste is contributing also to the pollution load, it affects the sustainable fisheries issue. So I do not know if they've read the reached a comfortable level, but the number of fishes that have been that can be caught in the Manila Bay has been drastically reduced, and so the uh, management of the critical habitats is also being discussed because it will somehow help to improve the habitat of the fishes who are surrounding or living near the area. So the sustainable fisheries is connected to the critical habitats, which can be only managed well if you manage the solid waste, but this can be managed properly if you control the informal settlers who are also the fishermen usually. And this is also a concern when it comes to the disaster risk. So I'm enumerating all of this just to say that when you have a problem, it cannot just be attacked one at a time. You have to look at the whole thing and try to arrive at a plan that will address all of these issues together. I'm using this matter because I remember when I began my solid waste advocacy, the issue was not yet plastic. The issue was the dump site or the landfills. And so when I was beginning, they were all telling me, we have to close down all the landfills. If we can get rid of all the sanitary landfills or dump sites, then we're in a better state. Only to find out when I went deeper into the problem of solid waste, you cannot eliminate right away the landfills because you don't have enough technology to handle all the different kinds of waste coming from the cities. So while you're recycling, reusing, redesigning, etc., all of these things, you will still end up with a percentage of residual waste that has to go to a landfill. But that landfill is not permanent because there will come a time that somebody will find a technology that can convert all this waste that is found in the landfill. So it becomes a temporary storage facility for residual waste that cannot be recycled at the moment, but they have future potential. There will come a time when all these landfills will become a resource once the proper technology is put in place. So next slide, please. Now, we look up to other more advanced countries to be able to look for models which we can use it in the Philippines. I'd like to use the model by Plastics Europe and find out which of their policies can be adopted here in the Philippines when it comes to the management of plastic waste. Now here, the title is Europe's Voluntary Commitment to Increase Circularity and Resource Efficiency. So this was made by Plastics Europe in response to the marine litter in their continent. So let's go to the next page. And here is I will be presenting the executive summary and discuss with you some of the important things that are that can be considered here in our own situation in the Philippines. So in the first page, they said that the European Commission aims to transform Europe into a more circular and resource-efficient economy. And the manufacturers of plastic fully support this objective. So they mentioned the word circular and resource-efficient economy. So they're not yet talking about banning anything. They're just saying that they think that the more longer-term approach is a circular economy. So let's go to the next page. So as we discuss circular economy, the Plastics Europe group said that it is widely recognized that plastics have a crucial role to play in delivering a more sustainable future. Now, they said that through the unique combination of lightweight, durability, and other intrinsic properties, plastics already contribute to emissions reduction. So, can you imagine a truck of beverage? If it was all made, put in bottles, then check the weight, how many tons will be the weight of a delivery truck full of soft drinks or soda that is in bottles as against one that is in plastic, PET bottles. So just because of the reduction in weight, plastics are already contributing to the reduction in emissions of that delivery truck. And also the efficient use of resources, and more efficient use of resources across a range of different sectors and everyday applications. I remember that when you scan the different materials that are being used in modern day applications now, even cell phones, you can talk about furniture. I'm now even able to buy a completely plastic cabinet to store many of my things. So there are many things that are now in plastic, and they're very durable, lightweight, and therefore very useful, very practical. And so to eliminate plastic altogether, it will really become a nightmare for some industries and for some for household purposes. Now, as a result of their versatility and capacity for innovation, plastic materials are also frequently best placed to support breakthrough sustainable technologies. In other words, we look at the future. Just look at your computer setup. How much of that is in plastic? Think of what material can be used to replace all these different modern equipment that we're using, and where can we get the replacements? And so plastics, in the meantime, while they are still, they can still be managed. That is really the best way to approach plastic management. And if you look at, if you try to look back at Manila Bay, the issue was that the people were looking at the plastic as the problem, because that was what they see whenever there is a big, as they see, monsoon, when the waves bring all the garbage from the bay into the into Ross Boulevard. So what they see is the plastic and all the garbage, but what they do not see is why the plastic reached the Manila Bay. Even if all the garbage collectors in Metro Manila do their work properly, there is still the culture. When I was a barangay captain, I was surprised that in my own barangay, where I had about 2 major creeks crossing my barangay, whenever there's heavy rain, the people, because of maybe cultural background or bad habits, they'd have this habit of throwing all their garbage into the creek during a heavy rainfall, thinking that all this garbage will just flow straight to Manila Bay. They will not anymore see that garbage. So if you look at our creek, you will see refrigerators, washing machine parts, you can see rubber tires, you can see all of these things in the creek. Therefore, that is not the problem of the plastic or the rubber or the material. It's the people who have this bad habit of deliberately throwing their garbage, their waste, into riverways or waterways, thinking that it will not be a problem. They get rid of the problem out of sight, out of mind. And so when the plastic or their garbage reaches the Manila Bay, people will blame now the plastic. People will blame the garbage, not thinking that it is the people themselves who created that problem. And so if the people are the problem, they can also be the solution. We believe, or I believe, that people can become the major solution to the plastic waste if they are properly educated and trained to do the right thing. So let's go to the 3rd page of this executive summary. I'm just trying to discuss some ideas that may not have occurred to many people in the past. It says here that, however, challenges relating to litter and end-of-life options for certain types of plastic waste must be addressed if the material is to achieve its fullest potential in a circular and resource-efficient economy. So there are still many things that have to be settled. That's why we have the Republic Act 9003, the Solid Waste Act in the Philippines, that is really one direct way of addressing the littering problem and the end-of-life options. In the Philippines, the biggest problem is the way they collect garbage. In the time of the about 10 years ago, one of the heads of the MMDA came out on the commercial that you don't have to consider garbage as a problem. Just put your garbage in front of your house, put it in a clean container, put it in front of your house, and the MMDA will take care of the rest, take care of the problem, which is exactly the opposite of Republic Act 9003. So when the MMDA tried to look for a place, they tried to bribe, or not really bribe, but offer a lot of incentives to LGUs who will host the landfill for Metro Manila. There were few takers. They went as far as Quezon province looking for a sponsor, a host for their sanitary landfill, and they had a hard time. And even in Rizal, where they are now throwing their, Manila is throwing its waste, there are many conflicting laws that should have prevented Manila from throwing its waste outside of their boundaries. But because it cannot be solved right away, it was a bitter pill for the people of Rizal to accept the waste of Metro Manila. And so the littering problem, like what I mentioned regarding my barangay, typical people, they just throw it into the creek when the rains are pouring hard. And end-of-life solutions where everything is considered residuals if there is no value. Like if a junk shop will look at the value of a kilo of sando bags or plastic bags, they will only buy it from you at 1 peso 50 centavos per kilo. And if you look at how much effort it takes to clean and stock together 1 kilo of plastic bags, it will not be worth your while to get 1 peso and 50 centavos for your effort. So what they do, they just throw it away because it does not become profitable for the junk shop to manage. They even have to spend more on labor just to put them together, to put together these plastic bags in a proper way. So again, the plastic becomes the culprit. They just say, well, let's just ban plastic bags because it is a problem. But look at what happened when Ondoy came around. When this big catastrophe came, the disaster of the Ondoy flood came to the Philippines, my friends from the plastic industry said they got an order for 16 million plastic bags just to address the relief efforts being done during that time for the victims of the Ondoy flood and many other disasters that followed. So where can you get 16 million alternatives to package all these relief goods in the same week that you ordered it? So that's what I'm saying. There should be a change of the way you look at what is really the problem, because plastics are needed because you cannot bring relief goods in brown bags, or you don't have enough nylon bags or reusable bags to put all these relief goods at that short period of time that is required. Okay, so that's one consideration that has to be addressed. Let's go to number 4. The Plastics 2030 voluntary commitment focuses on preventing leakage of plastics into the environment. Now, improving resource efficiency and the circularity of plastic packaging applications. So the Plastics 2030 commitment realizes that even though we collect the plastics and place them into the disposal system of a local government, there is still leakage because of the inefficiency of the way we collect waste. In the Philippines, we have the big problem of using dump trucks for collection. That is not really, was not meant to be. The dump trucks in the Philippines were meant to deliver the waste from the city to the landfill. which is probably 20, 30 kilometers away. But to save on trucks, the garbage collectors use the same trucks to collect on a house-to-house basis. So there is no more segregation. Even if the people segregate, the truck collectors will put them together in the truck. And so you now have a mixture again, and you arrive at more garbage. So, and then if this garbage is not properly managed, then it leaks into the marine environment. Okay, number 5. So now the idea is to aim at achieving the goal of 100% reuse, recycling, and recovery of all plastic packaging in Europe. Now, the overriding focus of this commitment is to ensure high rates of reuse and recycling, with the ambition to reach 60% reuse and recycling of plastics packaging by 2030. I remember my professor when I was still in college, he used the word design obsolescence. Okay, design obsolescence, which I can now see in this phenomenon of cell phones. If you look at the way cell phones are designed, they change packaging every year. Okay, so even the cell phone covers have to change every year because the cell phones change in sizes every year. The location of their cameras change every year. The size of the cameras, the way, the length and the width of these phones change also. So what I'm saying, there is no way to reuse or for people to use the same, let's say, the cell phone covers. They cannot use the same cover because if they buy a new phone next year, they will have to buy a new cover. So they throw away their old cell phone covers. So the reusability and recycling is not being given attention. That's why we have a lot of e-waste lying around. All these gadgets that have been considered obsolete, they cannot be redesigned or repurposed easily because they were not meant to be like that. That is what I understand with what Plastics Europe is trying to say. If we can redesign plastic so that it can be reusable, no? Hindi lang 1 year, it can be, you can reuse it several times. And after you have reached the end of life, then it can still be recycled and made into another type of plastic. That is what they mean with the 60% reuse and recycling of plastics. So I use the cell phone example because many people will be able to identify with that problem. That the cell phones are not designed, they were design obsolescence. They were meant to be obsolete so that you'll buy another phone next time, a new one every year. Okay, next slide. Now, ensuring the highest possible rates for recycling and reuse will require actions in the following areas. Okay, so I already mentioned this, no, the eco-design aspects to deliver sustainable packaging solutions. If you look at the way food is packaged now, that's why they call it single-use plastic, because after you consume the food inside the package, you throw it away. There is no intent of reusing any of this. And so collaboration with recyclers and public authorities on the application of improved separate waste collection systems. So there should be a better way of collecting plastic waste, and dump trucks is not the way to do it as we are doing it in the Philippines. So there has to be a better way of collecting it by putting up certain infrastructure at the subdivision level or on the street level or in the malls or in the groceries. That is needed. Number 7. How much time do I have said? I forgot to look at the time. Okay, so public and private funding. So there is still need for more funding for research and the development. And I will explain this later in the last part now about PARMS. Let's go to number 8. Yeah, another important pillar in the voluntary commitment is the educational aspect. So we have to put up, like in Europe, they also have to set up their educational projects. They have the target to prevent pellet loss and the new research into the origins of the most commonly occurring plastic litter in the environment. So Our NGOs are already doing that. They're making an audit of what they find whenever there's a coastal cleanup. They try to make an inventory of what is normally found. And you'll be surprised, no? Most of them are really the instant, yung mga 3-in-1 coffee packaging. You have the sandbags. You have the, and then if you live in near the coastal area, if they don't have comfort rooms, they use the plastic to put their own human waste and throw it in the ocean. That's what usually is what you collect, in the coastal cleanup. Then as Cedric was saying, one time he found so many slippers floating near the coastal areas. So you have all these rubber slippers that are floating around. So after you use up your slippers, you throw them to the ocean. Okay, now let's go to the next part of my talk. After the Plastics Europe approach. Next slide, please. Okay, now just to remind you that when we did the Ecological Solid Waste Act of the 2000, the idea was really to apply this inverted pyramid or inverted triangle approach, where avoidance, reduce, reuse, recycle is done before we even talk about residuals management. So this is already a common point that I won't have to elaborate on. But in addressing plastics, we still have to go back to the basics. Go back to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, if we go back to the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. I used this slide already several years ago in some of my previous talks. If we talk about the circular economy, because in the beginning I said we have to go back to the 3 R's, but in Plastics Europe, they also mentioned about the circular economy. Now this is how it will look like. I'd like to borrow this from the Recycling Council of Ontario. This is a model which I picked up from them. All it says is that the collection and processing, if you invest in infrastructure in order to collect properly, and process properly the waste, then you develop the markets for a recycled material. So whatever you produce from your processing goes into production and the marketing of certain products. But first you develop the market. For example, here in the Philippines, we try to develop the eco bricks. Some of our friends developed the bricks that have about 20% plastic content. But they did it in such a way that it becomes very smooth and very efficient. So they're now able to market these eco bricks, or these bricks made from composite materials, and they're able to enter the market, and they're able to produce it commercially. So you're now able to reduce the waste that you throw and put them into other materials like construction bricks. So they call it encapsulation. So you encapsulate the plastic material into construction materials. And also the in the consumption of these materials, you optimize the life cycle through alternative consumption. So you try to find other uses for plastic. And so you promote the reuse. And if the reuse is very efficient, then you improve the collection of these materials. So it goes in a cycle. So that's what it's trying to say. The circular economy feeds on its own as we develop the product becomes marketable. Since it's marketable, then you have need for more raw materials. And these raw materials are now given better means of recovery. And so the collection system is improved, and you end up with more materials for repurposing or redesign or reprocessing. So that's an example of a circular economy. So this is a product-oriented approach to a circular economy. So instead of going to a dump site or landfill, the chosen materials enter a cycle of production, marketing, then consumption, and then collection again. Now let's go to another model of a circular economy. In this model, the key players and drivers are the ones mentioned. So let's start from the upper left corner, the manufacturer. So from the manufacturer, they are the converters who use this what they get from the manufacturers. These are now converted into specific packaging that are now used by the brands. No? And the brands deliver their materials to the retailers. The retailers deliver them to the consumers, and the consumers are now the waste is now managed by the municipalities, the haulers, the composters, and the reprocessors, and they go back now to manufacturing. So it's a cycle, no? And the idea is to have all these sectors coordinated. So if the manufacturers are able to produce materials that have only one type of chemical composition, like plastics, for example, many plastics nowadays are multi-layered, meaning they have different types of plastic in one type of package. But if you can have them be composed only of one type of plastic, then when the packaging is used up already at the end of life, then they can still be very useful because it is easy to recycle when they're made out of single types of materials. But if you end up with a packaging that is made out of several layers of different types of materials, like when they package milk, it is carton on the outside, and you have a silver film inside, then you have other layers outside. It's very hard to find a machine that can recycle them properly. So we have some recycling technologies, but they're not that efficient. So they end up with like there was a time when these Tetra Paks were being used for plywood, for making of plywood. So it was efficient, but there was no market yet at the time that it was being produced or manufactured. The marketing was not yet developed at that time, so it didn't prosper very well. But there was a technology. So now, in trying to arrive at a circular economy, there really has to be a lot of investment in redesigning packaging, because the common idea, when it is made out of plastic, people have the idea that they throw it right away to the garbage can. That is the common training of people. When you get your snack food item, after you tear the plastic container, the first thing that goes to your mind is, where can I find the garbage can to throw my plastic? But if you have a type of packaging that the person knows will be reused, then he will start looking for the place where he can bring this reusable plastic package. And that is why there is now a need to connect the ones that collect these reusable plastic containers with the people who collect the waste. I discussed this in my previous talk, no? And in another conference, that there is a disconnection usually between the ones that are benefiting, those who benefit from the reusable packaging, and the ones who throw away the package. That is disconnected. And there's not enough advertising or education going around to tell you where to bring it. What they have in mind is the junk shop right away. But we are not supposed to be limited to junk shops. And we were proposing yung mga walk-through or drive-through places where you can just deposit your packaging so that you can get something in return. No? That's what I call the incentivized waste recovery system that can be adopted. And I'll maybe mention that further in my last part of my talk. But here I just showed you, three graphs of how a circular economy looks like. You have to integrate. This is the reason why I showed you that first diagram of the Manila Bay plan. The Manila Bay plan, I showed you the interconnectedness of all the different plans that they have. The same way, in the circular economy, you have to connect all of these different players, the different sectors from manufacturers, converters, brands, retailers, consumers. They should all be connected. That's the idea. We have to find a system where they all function efficiently to minimize the throwaway aspects of all these processes. Next slide, please. Okay, now we go to the last part of my talk, the Zero Waste to Nature Ambition 2030. This is a parallel to what I explained as the European model, but this is now the Philippine version. So they called it Zero Waste to Nature. And this has already been signed by a lot of sectors involved in waste production or the manufacturing of this plastic packaging. And not only plastic, but all the other types of packaging. So let's go to the main statement. Let's go to the next page. Now, in Zero Waste to Nature, PARMS is the one leading the effort, our organization. We believe that plastic waste, along with the other waste, should not end up in nature. So recognizing the benefits that plastics bring and importance of plastic waste management, the Philippine Alliance for Recycling and Material Sustainability, or PARMS, in collaboration with the supply and waste value chain and in partnership with academia, civil society, and government, commits to effectively initiate and support efforts to manage plastic along with other forms of waste and reduce the country's waste footprint consistent with Ambition 2030, Zero Waste to Nature, aim to ensure that mismanaged waste does not end up in waterways and oceans. So it's very similar to what we read earlier in the European model, but this is our local version. So we're incorporating not only plastic, but all the other types of packaging. Next slide, please. Now, PARMS is committed to continually partner with stakeholder groups to adopt science-based and practical solutions to reduce waste and support global, national, and local efforts to collect and recycle plastic waste, while keeping the commitment of global brands to shift to 100% sustainable packaging by 2025. So in PARMS, we put together, we gathered together the major companies that manufacture food. They're listed down, at the end of this presentation, but they got together. They're usually competitors, but they sat down together, worked with PARMS, and we were able to make them agree that they have to be part of the solution. But the solution has to be science-based and practical. Hindi pwedeng haphazard, hindi pwedeng political ang motivation or trying mapampapogi points lang. Hindi pwedeng ganun. It has to be science-based and practical solutions. While we're doing this in PARMS, the individual companies have their own global commitments. They have their global brands. They have committed to shift to 100% sustainable packaging by 2025. So double effort. It's a parallel effort done as an association under PARMS and done individually by the different companies based on their global commitment. So there is now a serious effort, and these are guided by the principles of life cycle and sustainability assessment, 3 R's, sustainable materials management, and circular economy. So these are the elements which I mentioned or talked about earlier. Now, to effectively manage waste, we commit to engaging in activities using our approach, including but not limited to the following. Next page, please. So to achieve this, we have to go to waste reduction. So you have to reduce the waste generation. So you go into packaging redesign, to improve recyclability and increase use of recycled plastics, and the voluntary phased withdrawal of non-recyclable products and packaging materials, where environmentally sound and economically viable alternatives exist. I remember in the Philippines, there was an issue in fast food centers where the use of plastic spoons and forks was being criticized. So they said you can use some reusable spoons and forks. Why go into plastic spoons and forks? And then when I got into the problem further, I realized that sa Philippines, the customers take home the steel spoons and forks. So can you imagine that? Inuuwi na nila when they when they eat in the restaurant, they put it in their pockets or in their bags, yung spoons and forks. So you end up after some time, nauubos. No? Nauubos yung spoons and forks. And so some of the fast food centers, they just switch to plastic disposables because anyway, they'll be stolen if they go into reusable. They don't get reused often enough because they're taken home by the customers. And so that is an issue. And then when the pandemic came out, we noticed that many people wanted plastic spoons and forks because they didn't want to reuse the metal spoons and forks, afraid of the virus. So you have another problem, the health problem. So they don't trust too much the sanitation in the canteens, so they would rather go into disposables. So these are the things that are on the practical side. There are many issues involved when it comes to replacing plastic utensils. But there are things that have been agreed on, like they got rid of the stirrers, yung plastic stirrers. That's a no-brainer because you can actually do away with that. It's not a major problem. But those are the minor things. And in Europe, those are one of the things that they already disposed of, yung stirrers. But the other types of plastic are not that easy to replace because there are not enough substitutes. And if you replace a lot of these plastic containers, packaging for bread, food, etc., fruits, you end up with more spoilage because the vacuum created in a plastic container, plastic package, cannot be done or cannot be achieved using paper bags or other types of packaging that are not airtight. Next page, please. So aside from reduction of waste, we also, of course, have to go into the reuse, explore alternative delivery systems. So when we deliver it to the consumers, we can go into refills, returnables, or multi-use packs. That's where these companies are now putting their money. They're trying to go into investing in redesigned packaging so that it can be reused. And it can be also recovered. So the waste collection or waste recovery system should be improved. And the PARMS has several designs, but I won't dwell into that in detail now. But we have already proposed certain improvements in recovery of reusable packaging. And of course, recycling. And now we have a lot of new recycling technologies, and they just have to be put in place. Like in the Philippines, we cannot use very big recycling machines because we are an archipelagic country. So we have so many islands, we cannot bring our waste into centralized recycling factories because you will have a lot of expenses in trying to make them, carry them across bodies of water. So it becomes expensive to transport from island to island. So recycling has to be done on a smaller scale to fit all our smaller islands. Except Luzon. Siyempre sa Luzon, we have a bigger base for recovery. Next page, please. So we have reuse, recovery, recycle, and the zero waste to nature. PARM shares the responsibility with all stakeholders. We similarly welcome the opportunity to contribute our ideas, capabilities, and resources in shaping initiatives and policies. In line with this, we commit to develop and implement a roadmap with concrete short, medium, and long-term targets to guide sound and implementable action towards this end. This was signed in January 2020, witnessed by many lawmakers in Congress. Now, I will not go into the detail because it should be launched in a separate date. We're already putting together the system to be able to incentivize the recovery of waste and to put the right credits to the people that are going to take part in the solution. But this is not the time to dwell on that. You just wait for the public announcement of PARMS that we will launch this zero waste to nature together with all the detailed programs that come with it. Now, to end my talk, I'd like to just show the list of the people who have signed this document. So you have on your screen the corporate investing partners. These are the major companies that are familiar to you. They are the people who are committed to become part of the solution. They are often in the honor roll of Greenpeace, but now they want to show that they are also, they do not want to be forever in the honor roll of the culprits. They want to be the problem solvers. In the next page, we have some of the other people who are committed to this effort. The industry associations. So you have the Philippine Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Philippine Industries, the Paper Manufacturers, Plastic Industry Association, Polystyrene, Packaging Institute, Pollution Control Association, and the United Recyclers Organization of the Philippines. So all these big associations are all now agreeing to work together. This is a major effort of PARMS to bring them together, to come out with a statement, to come out with the details of the statement, and to make everybody jump into the boat, into the same boat, and become part of the solution. And the last page is the other groups that are part of this, the NGOs. You have the Philippine, the Business for Sustainable Development, Solid Waste Management, or SWAP, and the NCORA was also with us on this effort. So that's all. No? That's basically what I want to just share this afternoon, that we are going towards or trying to achieve a solution which is already in blueprint. It has a blueprint, but we will announce this very soon after when the pandemic dies down. We'll have the right venue to announce this. Thank you very much.